Hello, everybody. Thank you for being with us for this webinar, in which we will talk about some very sensitive questions about the surrogate mothers. Sheila, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much, Anna, for introducing me briefly. And I would just like to add a line to that. That is, I did one surrogacy study in 2009-10, and there was more intensive. I studied lesser number of women, and then I did an impact assessment study. I studied an impact of the surrogacy 10 years later. So 2019-20, I did another study on surrogacy. So, and that time I interviewed about 45 women. So I had some kind of a assessment of what psychological, what physical impact it had on women, and the financially, the monetary impact of women of surrogacy on their lives. So these are three things I studied. So I have a slide which I want to share with you. So basically, because we are talking about death today, I want to show you the different aspects of death and it almost takes you through the entire surrogacy process that women in India, surrogate mothers in India experience. So I'll start with a recent death. This is not from my study, but in 2019, a surrogate mother died in India. And this is after the law came. It's not the law, basically it's a bill, and it is still under procedure. But commercial surrogacy has been banned in India. According to that bill, commercial surrogacy has been stalled, as it's not supposed to be happening. And people from abroad are not supposed to come and do surrogacy. So it came as a shock that a woman had actually got involved in commercial surrogacy. She was 42 years old, way beyond the limit of the surrogate mother's age in the bill. So according to the bill, it was 35 is a higher age limit, and this woman was 42. And she had experienced, she died because of a combination of tuberculosis and two other diseases that she had. And she was also taking anti-depression pills. So she was under depression. So there are two possibilities that could have happened. That is, she might have hid this illnesses from the doctors. Clearly, there was no medical checkup that was done so that she could be screened for it. So, or she could have been forced to hide this information by her relatives. And she was a widow. She was a mother of two children. So this came as a shock. So now there are some medical practitioners and she gave birth in a very, very one of the topmost hospitals in India, which is called AIIMS, All India Medical Institute Sciences, and in Delhi, and she died. So one life is gone, and we do not know how many such lives. Like, this is kind of a tip of an iceberg, because according to my study, this 45 mothers that I had studied, it's a very small number of surrogate mothers just in one clinic, and still there were unrecorded deaths of surrogate mothers. So I was interviewing Gracie. I'm standing with Gracie here in this photograph. And I interviewed her. She was my first or second, the second surrogate mother that I interviewed. And it was so distressing because she herself was so depressed. She had done surrogacy almost more than a year or two ago, but she was extremely depressed because she had experienced, she kept on telling me that I was depressed, I was heartbroken, I was not eaten properly, and so on. Then I kept probing her. I asked her what had happened. So she said there was a roommate of hers who had died inside the surrogate home. So she was living in a as Maria said, in Ukraine, there's no such surrogate homes, but in India, most of the clinics have surrogate homes where women have to stay in kind of hostel kind of situations where they have to stay away from home. So this adds on to their mental status. And Gracie told me that Sangeeta's image stayed in front of my mind all the while. So whenever I opened my room door, I saw her bed and I could imagine Sangeeta sleeping on her bed and talking to me. I remember that always and even now. So she is constantly petrified. And when she was inside, she was really, really scared that she's going to die as well. So this is not just one surrogate mother. So this is Gracie's case. But there were so many other near-death situations. So there were so many other near-death situations. There were surrogate mothers who faced, who experienced other surrogate mothers having hemorrhage during delivery. So both of them are on cesarean table, and one of the surrogate mothers faces a cesarean and a hemorrhage altogether, and there's blood everywhere, and then uterus has to be removed. So all these kind of near-death situations, there were at least several surrogate mothers in my study whose uterus had to be removed eventually because of the hemorrhage. The other aspect of death, this is the first thing that is told to them when they come to the clinic. When they come to the clinic, actually these women are combed from very, very poor locations. So agents are sent around to very poor locations in India, and women who are really desperate for money, those women are picked up to do surrogacy. So the first thing they are told is, yeah, you just have to become pregnant, give a baby in the end to someone else. That's it. They're not told about any of the adverse facts, what happens to them and so on. But one thing they are told is, you might die. During the process, you can die, and that is not our responsibility. So the doctor clearly tells that to the surrogate mother. And as Maria said, here also there was no health insurance, no medical insurance, no life insurance. So the first thing they hear is that. So what goes on in the minds of the surrogate mother? For example, the lady, the surrogate mother sitting here, Parul, I asked her, she said the only thing that was going on in my mind is, it's okay if I die. I'm so desperate for the money, so it's fine if I die, and I have to do this for the sake of my children. So it's the ultimate sacrifice. And it's not only Parul, it was all the surrogate mothers who said this. They had the fear of death. They were told that they could die, and yet they did it just for the sake of money. So the other aspect, the third aspect of death that came about is surrogate mothers. Even Parul said the same thing, even this Sneha said the same thing, that I asked them, would you become a surrogate agent? Because some of the surrogate mothers, after they finish surrogacy, a few of them become surrogate agents themselves. So I asked all of them, do you want to become a surrogate agent? Most of them said, we will not ever become a surrogate agent because there is this fear of death. So their conscience inside their heart tells them that I cannot take another woman to do this. If I die, it's okay. But if I take another woman to surrogacy, and if she dies and her children are orphaned, then that entire guilt is on my head. So I cannot do that just for the sake of money, for that extra money. I cannot do that. So if I die, my children will get money behind me, but I cannot do that to another surrogate mother. That is what that's the third aspect of death that came out very clearly in my case studies. The near-death situations. For example, I'm standing in the middle, and both the sides with me are two surrogate mothers. The one with the gray sweater, Sarla, she actually witnessed another surrogate mother who had a very, very near-death situation. She had a hemorrhage, her uterus had to be removed. So she was very scared. This will happen during her delivery. And the other with the red shawl around her neck, Ujwala, she was pregnant. She was a second-time surrogate mother. And when she became pregnant with twins, in utero selective abortions was done on her in the 3rd month. So this particular clinic, what they do is they put 5 embryos into this surrogate mother's womb. Although legally they allowed only 3 embryos allowed, they put 5 embryos, and if more than 2 happen to survive, then they do a in utero selective abortion. So they actually abort one of the fetuses inside the womb. So the same thing happened to her, and this is a very risky procedure because the fetuses can die, all of them can die. It can have an adverse impact on the mother, and we all know that surrogacy actually is a much more high risk pregnancy than normal pregnancies. So in her case, she got into bleeding, and she did not. It was not an immediate miscarriage. So she was on bedridden. She started bleeding, and almost 1 month later, she lost both the babies. And in that 1 month, she's saying that her health deteriorated so much. She started telling me that I would never do it again, because she wanted that little extra money to buy that house, and she couldn't buy the house. She's now living with her in-laws. But even her husband started feeling guilty, and he said, "Oh my God, what if I had lost her?" She had almost died because of the situation. And there are so many cases of near-death situations where women do not die, but they face severe health problems. For example, some women had faced, they developed thyroid, they developed blood pressure, they developed all kinds of illnesses after this surrogacy. And they said during their own surrogacy, they have never faced any problems. One thing that all the surrogate mothers told me was their capacity to work had reduced after the surrogacy. So they all had children before the surrogacy. So they, according to the law rule, they have to be mothers, and then only they can come as surrogate mother. So they already have experienced one pregnancy before, and they say there's a huge difference between what the pregnancy they experienced, their own pregnancy, and the surrogacy pregnancy. They were not able to do any work before. And for these women, not able to do work means their income reduces. So their income has reduced drastically because they have not been able to do the kind of work they used to do before. So they used to work as servants and maid servants in other people's houses. They are not able to do that kind of work. So overall, their capacity to work had reduced, and they had experienced all kinds of adverse health impacts. And one case happened when I was sitting with 2 surrogate mothers, and the 2 of them started discussing about the cases that they heard of other surrogate mothers who had experienced cancer and HIV and so on. I myself did not experience or ask any surrogate mother. No surrogate mother had told me that they themselves experienced it. But I overheard Sarala and Sunita talking to each other, and they had heard many surrogate mothers who had experienced, cancer and HIV as well. The psychological impact. So we, just like the first surrogate mother I told you, the case that I started with, the 42-year-old surrogate mother, she was actually having a depression problem. So it is almost 62% of the surrogate mothers that I had interviewed, they all had shown signs of some form of depression. They were feeling sad frequently or extremely frequently. The reasons why is, one of the reasons was that they were missing the babies, and they wanted to know the whereabouts of these children. There were several other reasons why they were having some kind of depression, because as I told you, Gracie, she had experienced a near death. They themselves or others had witnessed other people having some kind of sickness, near death situations. In this particular case, Sneha had missed the baby so much, her husband had told her not to discuss ever about the surrogate baby. So she had closed that chapter. She had never talked about the child again. But when I came along and I asked her about the baby, she showed me the photograph and she started weeping. So I had to stop the interview, and these two children were watching her. So I can imagine there was so much of impact, not only on the surrogate mother, but also on her children. Then there were other surrogate mothers whose children were saying that my mother is the mother of the child. In what way is my mother not the biological child of mother of these of the children that she gave away? And why do people come and have children like this? Why was my mother harassed? So I was asked questions by surrogate mothers' children, that why they had to face something like this, why their mother had to face something like this. So why can't people go and do find other ways of having children? So I didn't have my answers to these teenage children, who were questioning about the rights of their mother. And lastly, I want to tell, these are the unseen, unrecorded deaths of fetuses and babies. So every time the surrogate mother dies or something happens to her or near-death situation, there are innumerable number of fetuses who are dying. Now, many of the babies born to the Indian surrogate mothers are low weight, extremely low weight. They are preterm. So many of them are born in 7 months, 8 months. And there is no record of how many of these babies survive or how many of these babies die. So finally, I want to say that there are, multiple physical impacts of surrogacy, and it ranged from just, the hormone injections, and like Ujwala told me, still her, skin is hard. She cannot touch that place because in places where she has got this hormone injections, it still pains for her. Gracie told me that her nerves have got jammed since the surrogacy. It depends from there onwards to, diseases that they develop post surrogacy, the removal of uterus, the near death situations, and also death of surrogate mothers. So I strongly believe, and I not only believe, I've also seen and worked on this and known from the surrogate mothers themselves that this is a very, very risky practice, and this should be stopped at any cost, and it should not be allowed, like right now in India, and whether it is altruistic or commercial purposes. So I end my presentation with that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sheila. There is a question for you, Sheila. How did some of the women get the HIV?
They are saying that it is a surrogacy process from which they have got this disease. They are not very clear about how they have got it, but there's one kind of a theory that they have is that they could have been have got some kind of genetics from the process itself, because there is the surrogate baby inside them, and probably that, and also because of the impact of the medications and like diseases like cancer and so on. That's what they said, that it's probably because of the process that they have got the disease.
Another question was, how are the governments informed about all those situations, and mostly the governments who think to legalize surrogacy, as it is the case of the Canada. So how the information gets to the political level, the decisionary political level?
Yeah, so when this law was coming up, the commercial surrogacy against the surrogacy regulation bill 2016, it came up in. That was when it came up in 2016, and they were developing the bill. So Lok Sabha passed it, and there was another level that they had to pass. But there was a discussion that was going on, and even I was called for that. So they had 7 rounds of discussion, and on the 6th meeting, I was invited. And I realized that there was a very strong, a kind of a push for not completely banning surrogacy, because there was a demand that there is a infertility is high, and people need this surrogacy as a practice and so on. And so they all had my report. In the parliament, they had all read my report, that the follow-up report that I had written. So they are well informed, but I think there is a lot of pressure on them to keep it alive, not completely closed down. But I think after this, after the death of this woman in 2019, it has kind of opened even some of the eyes of the medical practitioners, because this is like altruistic only surrogacy was allowed. How come a woman who was 42 years old did commercial surrogacy? She was extremely poor. She was not relative of the intended parents. So it has come out very openly that it is still going on. So not openly, not in a big way as it was before, because before it was like trafficking, because it was so much of business, everywhere it was allowed. So it was going like everything. It was all over the place. But now that has reduced, but still it is happening, that means. So the government has to look at that case. So, yeah.
Sheila, we know that, and you also told us that. We know that there were so many surrogacy clinics in India. Do you think most of them closed down, or do they went somewhere else around the world?
Okay, so none of them closed down, nothing closed down, because they were all IVF clinics already. So they were already additionally doing surrogacy. So they have lost a lot of business, because since the 2016 bill, because the foreign currency, there was a huge business approach, and a whole all kinds of activities that was going on because of the foreign currency. It was big money that was coming in from abroad. And that has stopped, and that has made some of the doctors really, really disappointed. So the business has come down, but they're still doing all other activities, and in the name of altruistic surrogacy. So they are really disappointed because foreigners cannot come in. But within India, altruism is allowed. Without money is allowed, and relatives are allowed to do surrogacy. So they somehow find loopholes, and they're doing it. So this is somebody's aunt's nephew's something, and they bring some lady, and surrogacy is done, but it's not like before, nothing like before, because earlier it was so bad that some of the poorer regions of India, trafficking had even started, because the business was so lucrative, so much of money involved, that young girls had started being trafficked into surrogacy. So that, to that extent, those things have stopped. That's not happening anymore.
Thank you, Sheila. I'm going to add something, because we have an attendee who is adding something very, very interesting. She's saying that she is from West Africa, and she knows that women are often taken away from their family to be thrown into baby fabrics. They are just raped to produce babies. And I must say that we all also know the case in Senegal, women being captured to be raped and by people who sell the babies. It is something very, it's a very important hint here. As a coalition, we are starting a study. We are starting to study the link between migration and surrogacy. And what we learned from that is that there is nearly no difference between forced pregnancy and surrogacy. Nearly, there is only one difference, which is medical practices between the women and the commissioning parents. But otherwise, it's the same to us.
There's one question that came up for me now. Rita Banerjee has asked whether WISE had done an undercover report on extra eggs and sperms from white customers from abroad in India have a market. Yes, there was when it was commercial surrogacy, and even probably now, because in India we have this not just for white customers, sometimes even for within India, there was a huge market for white skin. There's a demand because there's also this whole body image of, you know, having white being more beautiful. So the eggs and sperms were a lot more expensive. So people used to actually buy eggs and sperms from abroad. There was a big market in Denmark, I guess. So there's still a bank there. There's still a bank of you know, eggs and sperms. So yes, yeah, it was a when it was surrogacy was legal, there was a much larger market, but now it might have reduced to some extent.
There isn't any more question. Maybe we can stop here. We have to thank everybody to be here today. Sheila, Maria, Anna, thank you for your time and for having spent your experience with us.